All right, and we are back with Survivor 42 and 42. Just finished Survivor KAOH. Michelle Fitzgerald just won, and we've got a lot to talk about going down that road. Spoilers, I am a big Michelle fan, so if you think this is going to be one of those ones where we kind of shit on her win, you might want to leave now. We are joined once again for the third time during this, third, I believe, Zoe, and something that I've never asked you on here, and I don't know how it slipped my mind. What is your Survivor hot take?
Oh God, you didn't give me enough time. I thought I was
just on the spot. Like, what's your Survivor hot take?
Not every Survivor season is worth watching. I don't know if that's like a real, actual hot take.
That is a huge hot take.
Okay, that'll be my.
I disagree with that.
And for the first time on the show, and especially in 42 and 42, we have James. James, what is your Survivor hot take?
Yeah, I guess this would be considered a hot take. I think something I've come to terms with relatively recently is that luck has a much bigger portion of the game than people want to admit that it does. People like to pretend the players have everything under their control, but actually this season showed, that is not the case.
Yes, luck
and Tom West huge aspect of Survivor
at Heroes versus Villains. You know, when he said that it's it's one part physical, 1 part social strategic, and 1 part luck. When Russell Hantz was going in his whole tirade about how I had no luck and it was all me, and it's like, all right, well, fuck you. But also, there's always some luck to it. Even in sports, there is luck to winning or losing games.
Yeah,
don't like the best team does not always win. Sometimes things happen that prevent that best team from winning the day that it matters. So luck is a big role in this.
Yeah.
And that, we were talking about Survivor KAOH. The second time they've done Brains, Brawn, Beauty. Obviously not as good, in my opinion, not as good as the first time around, but I do feel like we've got a lot of interesting characters in all three tribes. I feel like this season is more memorable. One, for that final three and the controversial aspects of it. Two, because they almost killed 3 of their cast members at different points throughout the season. But 3, I feel, and I honestly feel it's like this is a very stacked cast of memorable players, and we've seen 4. We've seen 3 or 4.
Aubrey, Ty, Caleb, and Michelle.
So 4.
Debbie, no?
And Debbie.
Oh, Debbie, that's 5.
Yeah, 5.
What? That's a sin. They brought those 5 back and not Sydney.
And not Sydney. But we've had these characters that I feel like this is the best version of Debbie.
What the fuck?
It's the best version of Debbie by a lot.
Fucking Debbie.
This is the best version of Aubrey. We'll talk about why that is. But I like Ty and Michelle in their second time around, and Caleb doesn't overstay his welcome in Game Changers, so he can go. I guess this is his best version as well. But we'll start with Zoe. This being the second Brains, Brawn, Beauty season, do you feel like, I mean, obviously it had a lot to live up to with the first one, but do you feel like it lived up to those expectations, even if you don't think it was as good as the first one?
So I have a lot of nostalgia for this season because it was the first season I watched. And so when I think of this season, it's like extremely fondly, which I understand that not a lot of other people like. It's a pretty good season regardless, but it's, oh my gosh, sorry.
No, that's right. Just keep on going.
But I know not a lot of people agree. Like, it's like a fine, pretty good season. In my brain, it's not better than Kagayan because, like, it's an iconic season. Like, if I'm showing somebody one for the first time, it's probably going to be one of these two because I feel like the themes, I don't know, kind of interesting.
As corny as no collar, white collar, blue collar.
Please. That's one of the seasons.
That's
whatever.
I actually need to rewatch that season at some point, but I don't like that season.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't, and I can say that now, but we couldn't the other day. But James, some of the cast members that stood out to you as we're like, pre-merge. So, what they become later on, we're not going to touch that right now. But who was standing out to you at the beginning of the season? Who were you rooting for? Who did you feel like I'm probably never going to like this person, etc.?
Honestly, I was rooting really hard for. This is sound weird. I was rooting for a lot of the beauties. Like, I actually was rooting for Caleb. I know a lot of people didn't like him, especially with his behavior on Big Brother. But I was rooting for I'm always rooting for people's redemption. That you're gonna see that. So I was rooting for him. I was rooting for Sydney, and Alicia. Obviously, I feel like Alicia. She had that scrappiness to her that everyone wanted to root for. But then it's like you see her missteps, and you're like, "Oh, girl, that ain't the move."
Well, and the Alicia is she stayed 2 more rounds than she probably should have.
She should have. Honestly, to this moment, if you want me to define the most unexplained vote in Survivor history that they did give a reason for, it'd be the vote for Darnell. It really didn't make a lot of sense to me.
It was because he was black, right? I'm just like,
okay, honestly, no. Okay, no, I'm not trying. I'm the last person who pulls that card, but low key, I thought it was really sus. Like,
yeah, I agree. I do feel like I didn't. Oh, the Sia thing is happening right now on the reunion. So I've always been very confused about the Darnell vote. Like, I understand that he fucked up during the challenge, but at this point in Survivor history, that isn't really a reason to vote someone out.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I rewatch this season, it's confusing because he makes a lot of good points before Tribal and even at Tribal.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they chose to get rid of him in the end, I've just trying to give these people the benefit of the doubt. I was like, well, maybe Alicia just fought for it harder. Maybe she just gave better reasoning behind it. And we see that again with the second time that the Brawns have to go to Tribal, where once again she's able to almost talk her way out of a situation.
Well, in fairness, Jennifer buried herself. That was like Jennifer basically started digging, and Alicia's like, "Here's the shovel, girl," and that was on Jennifer 100% because I just watched that, and Alicia saw the moment to throw Jennifer under the bus and took it. She took it, rightfully so. So, I mean, I'll give Alicia credit on that one because she absolutely saw, oh, hey, this plan's not working. Let me toss her under the bus. It was brilliant.
So
Darnell, part of me thinks it might not have been a fully black thing, but I wonder if they thought maybe something was going on between Sydney and Darnell, and they wanted to split that up without saying it.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
They showed Sydney and Darnell talking like.
Oh, you mean just like as a alliance?
Yeah, like they were an alliance. So let's split that up.
I thought you meant like something going on. I'm like,
no. Oh God, no! It's Survivor. You nasty. Y'all sand in your drawers. No.
Zoe, this is the last time that we have a non-Fiji season. And I do feel like they go out on top with it. I do feel like I like the theme. I like some of the challenges, but at this point, it does start to feel like, all right, it's the same old stuff over and over again. And it's crazy because now that they're in Fiji, it's the same old stuff over and over again. But what did you think of the location? What did you think of this as the final non-Fiji season?
I mean, it's pretty benign. Like, it's not China, is what I want to say. Like, they sometimes will put them in, like, really interesting locations where it's not, cut and dry, like, how they're going to build the shelter or whatever. Like, the traditional aspects of literally surviving, which is genuinely what the premise of the show was supposed to be before they figured out, like, it's a cool game,
People don't care about the survival aspect.
People still do. I know people who watch it strictly for the challenges.
That's weird.
I can't relate. But, I think that they kind of chose, like, I guess culturally it's pretty cool, but they didn't show enough of that.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. It just feels like kind of another tropical location, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah. No, I'll be honest. I actually, to jump in on that, I thought I forgot they were in Cambodia until Jeff mentioned it at the elephant thing. The
Yeah.
elephant reward. I was like, oh, they're in Cambodia. That's right. Wrong. I guess that is Cambodia, not Fiji.
Yeah.
And it is crazy just because now there have been 10 seasons since this, that, you know, this is the final one. And especially watching it the way that I've been watching it, where every season there's this new location. For the most part, you know, they go to a couple places more than once, but it's always a new location and you look forward to that. You know, not, you know, I don't feel like people watch the show to see the scenery, but it is fun to see the scenery change every season. And this is the last time that really get that, because now they're just on the same island every season for Fiji, and you can, or in Fiji for every season. So you can kind of point out things that keep showing up in every season. It's like, oh, that's where this conversation happened on the last season or something like that. So I do miss them having in different locations. I absolutely understand why they stay in Fiji. And I don't think they're going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But they are now talking about all the injuries and stuff that happened this season, which is I guess a nice segue to the fact that Survivor tried to kill all of their cast members this season. Even if you want to start with Jenny and her ear bug thing, but even, you know, going from there, there's the infamous.
You just know they could have given her some rubbing alcohol and like.
Oh my God, they could have done anything for this poor woman. Like, I call metaphor for everything else.
Okay, that's Survivor, girl. You out there in the elements.
No, this is like that thing could like eat your brain.
I don't know if it could go that far. I think I will say I'm surprised medical didn't step in and go, hey, you know, we're gonna at least check it out.
Yeah,
make sure you're not too serious.
They could have just not shown it to us, but from what we're seeing, it looks like they're just like, fuck her. She can just do whatever she wants. And, you know, thankfully they get the bug out of her ear, and she goes home that same episode. I'm pretty sure that same episode. But we get to the infamous spice rack. Was it the spice rack? Did Caleb almost die over a spice rack? Is that what it was? Or was it spices?
Yeah, it was a thing.
Challenge. And I'm going to be honest, every time I've watched this season, which is now 5 times, that episode, I only cry during family visits and some people's wins. And I will cry at that episode every single time I watch it, including today. And I think I finally pinpointed where I start to get emotional. And it's when Sydney starts crying and then Ty starts crying. And I'm like, I can't believe this still gets me every single time. But they, you know, they're doing the sand challenge in the hot sun, and fucking Beast Mode Cowboy almost dies on national television. And James, we'll start with you. Thoughts on, well, first of all, do you think that production should have stepped in earlier and said, hey, you know what? It is really hot. Maybe we'll do something different this time around. But I'll just overall, just your feelings with that entire scene.
Okay, so maybe this is a hot take. I have the belief that the production, they're responsible for the safety of the contestants, but on some level, there has to be that, hey, we're on Survivor, like, we know this is inherently dangerous. So I kind of feel like production, I think maybe if anything should have just been like, hey, we got to give everyone water real quick. Like, just, if you're talking about something like that, yeah. Like, maybe they should have been like, you know what? Once Debbie and Sydney and Caleb all go down, that's showing a pattern across different body types, across different age groups. Maybe we got to do something here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the weirdest thing is if I didn't know that was coming up, I wouldn't have expected that. Like, legitimately, I didn't realize that was the challenge. It took me a minute while watching it, like, oh, snap, this is the challenge. Caleb, like, dies right after. Yeah. And also, I'm glad that I know Caleb's okay, because since I know that, I did find it darkly humorous.
Wow.
Because, like, here's the thing. I'm going to make myself sound like a bad person. But, like, Jeff is telling him, hey, we're pulling you from the game, and Caleb is not responding. I'm like, bro, like, homeboy looked like he died. Like, Jeff don't know if he, like, is Caleb okay? In that moment, we don't
can't
know.
give you consent or denial, Jeff, because he can't hear you.
He can't hear you. I'm just like,
He's not conscious.
and then like, okay, but then the other part is they're like, oh, we're gonna carry you by your tribe and let them say goodbye to you. And I'm like, get this guy, like, make him stay first, please. I'd be like, screw my tribe.
Literally, they're showing that, they're showing Jeff talk to him right now.
Like, can you all make sure he's good first?
Zoe, thoughts on the scene? Thoughts on the challenge?
Aside from the hilarious moment of like them essentially bringing a dead body by their tri-dates just for one last look, it's like heartbreaking. I don't know.
It was.
And like at first you're like, okay, they're being a little dramatic, like especially Debbie. I don't know. That's just my instinct with her. But
we'll get to Debbie.
Wait, what'd you say about Debbie? I missed that.
I said it was my instinct to think that she was being over dramatic.
Okay, honestly.
But yeah, I don't know. And especially that Caleb has to leave so early, and like he was somebody that I genuinely was rooting for, and like I loved his relationship with Ty so much. Just like such an unlikely little pair. And yeah, it was disappointing to see it not be able to play out.
I replaced him with Scott, so it all worked out for him in the end. I will say that I didn't watch. I've watched 2-3 seasons of Big Brother. I think that was 1, 2, and 23. So I didn't know Caleb. I'm just not a Big Brother person.
No, it's fine. His season is the worst season of Big Brother in my opinion.
So I had no idea who he was going into this, but I did enjoy him in his 4 episodes that he's around, and I did enjoy his relationship with Ty. And so when he goes, you really feel for Ty in that situation. But like I said, like I was joking when I said it, but Ty rebounds very well by finding his new buddy Scott Pollard, who we will also talk about. But I want to go back to Debbie, because like I said at the beginning of this, I do feel like this is the better version of Debbie, because it doesn't seem like Debbie's playing the role of Debbie like she does in Game Changers, where I feel like she went into Game Changers and almost was like, oh, well, this is why they wanted me. I'm going to turn that shit up to 11 and get people to hate me. Hate's a strong word, but like, I am not a fan of Debbie in Game Changers. She's one of my least favorite people, and Jeff Varner's on that season. She's not my least favorite person, though. I will say that Jeff Varner is my least favorite person on the season. But in this season, it almost comes off as wholesome goofball. She is, we have Philip Shepard as black coach. We have Debbie as female coach. And as a person that is not a coach fan, I prefer Debbie 1.0 and Philip Shepard 2.0 over Coach any 0.0. So what were your all's thoughts on, we'll go Zoe first. What were your thoughts on Debbie this time around?
I mean, one of the best characters of the season, and like what makes the season so enjoyable to watch. Like, and what they do with like Debbie's character and her editing, and like the little name tags that they give her where they change her job every time because she keeps talking about a new profession that she's been, and like I don't know, she is so enjoyable to watch and make fun of. And like, that like scene where they're twisting it around on Liz or whatever, and she starts evil laughing into the camera, and they give her like a lightning strike or whatever. Like I don't know. Clearly the producers and the editors loved her, and they show her very fondly through the season.
James?
Yeah, I actually love Debbie's character, and I'll even go so far as to say, while I understood Aubrey's frustration with Debbie, I do think getting rid of Debbie was a terrible move for her. I think getting rid of Debbie was awful that situation. For her. Huh?
Who would you have gotten rid of in that situation?
See, that's the tough part, because Julia did win the challenge. I hate saying it. I actually kind of think they screwed up by not going for one of the guys. Like, I probably would have.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
I mean, I don't know. I can see the logic in getting rid of Debbie. I just think it needlessly cut down a number that was never going to go for Aubrey. I don't think Debbie would have turned on Aubrey, and that's something When I play Survivor, I think more of my protection long term juxtaposed to who I need to get out. Because I'm going to go for people who might write my name down eventually.
Yes,
so
that's fair.
I don't think going for
we
dead
will
people
get
is
to that tribal and the Scott Pilar tribal. And the merge boot in a bit. But pre-merge wise, I do feel like it's very cut and dry. You know, we've got some characters. They go. They bring back Exile Island kind of for a one round kind of. Yeah. We hit the merge and everyone's fucked up. Everyone's dying of something, and the only person that has to go is Neil, the ice cream guy, or ice cream pants guy. The Neil, suckling on the teeth. Neil. That's the last. We'll bring up that whole thing.
So cringe.
Yeah, there's just a weird thing to say to Michelle in that situation, but you know what? And so we get to the real merge boot of Nick, who I was not a fan of this season, and one of my favorite Michelle Fitzgerald lines is, "I don't need to be carried, bro." And I quote
I know,
that
bro.
in my real life. Yeah, I quote that in my real life because I feel like that's one of the moments where we realize who Michelle is as a character of like, you're not carrying me. I do whatever I want. And she didn't like the way that he was talking to her. And that's when the women take the game for a couple of rounds. And so Nick goes home. Scott and Jason are poor sportsmanships, in terms of Natalie Anderson, poor sportsmanship. And they pour the water on the fire. They hide the machete and everything. Do y'all, and Zoe, we'll start with you. Do you see a place for that in the game? Because I understand playing the villain. I understand doing this, that, and the other. But do you think there is a line? Is there a line, and did they cross it in this season?
I think the line happens when people stop being able to if production gives you a machete, like, you should probably have that machete. They probably find it pretty essential. Also, I just don't like that behavior. Oh, sorry, that's like one of my least favorite alliances of all time because they're such bullies about the way that they play, and like, it's a game, and I think that it's a game with a lot of like respect attached to its name, and it's best when you play it respectfully. And so taking away people's ability to survive is disrespectful. And the fact that that was a choice that they made that they thought would benefit them, and I guess did in a way, like, I don't know. Is it worth it? Like, you're not smart enough to come up with a real move and you have to sabotage everybody? I'm so sorry.
James?
All right, so Sandra did the same shit in Pearl Islands, and she's freaking loved for that.
Okay.
So, counterpoint to that, second of all, I do think a lot of it had to do with the way they were coming out people, because Sandra did it subversively and didn't tell anyone she was doing it. But Scott and Jason to sit here and say it wasn't an emotional move, it would be like, I thought they were lying about, oh, we're doing it to get in their heads, it's psychological. No, they did it because they wanted to be assholes. Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
But do I think they crossed a line in terms of like an outside the game line being crossed? No. Sorry, but unfortunately, sabotaging your tribe, part of the game. Not a good move, I don't think. I don't think it was a good move for them, because the best thing to do in that situation is try and work your way in, and that's just going to further divide you from the tribe. Yeah. So I don't think
Mr. Joe calls him out on it. One of Mr. Joe's like 3 scenes in this entire season.
I disagree.
Mr. Joe calls out Scott and says,
Joe all over the damn place.
He calls out Scott and says, you're sabotaging us. You're doing this, that, and the other. And Scott is like, well, you did this to us. You backstabbed us. It's like, well, no, they didn't. They were trying to protect. The only person that really backstabbed you in that situation was Sydney and kind of Michelle, but like, no.
How did Michelle betray them?
Yeah, it was mostly Sydney.
It was Sydney. It was pretty much solely Sydney.
And you're making this into a tribe thing, and it's funny. It's funny to watch them and the way they react to the one time that Michelle has left, 1 or two times that Michelle's left out of the vote at Merge, and the round that she has to vote out Julia. Like, she consistently puts herself back in a great situation instead of pissing everyone off and wanting people and getting people to want to vote her off. So I do agree with you on that. As far as the sabotaging and all that, I mean, obviously I am against it. I understand that it is, they're not burning other people's personal stuff. But
yeah, that'd be too far. That would be too far.
Yeah. The thing is, and this is one of the things with Ty, is if Ty was smart enough in that moment, it would be like, yeah, I'm just going to go to the end with Scott and Jason and sweep, because now everyone is pissed off at these two. And all Ty has to do is sit there and say, you know what, I was really against it, but, blah, 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 I had to. These are my goats. Give me the $1 million. Do I think that actually could have worked? Yes. I do think that Ty could have won in that situation.
No.
Zoe,
well, yeah, but they would have cut him. They weren't taking him to the end, and I actually believe them when they told Julia that they were going to take Julia to the final three. I don't think they would have taken Ty.
Zoe?
The original question was...
Ty wins in the final three with them.
Oh, I think that this is a really emotional jury. Even with them on it, it's an emotional jury. And also, like, they probably influenced a lot of the emotion going into that. So I can't see a lot of people not being upset with them for not just playing villainous games, but for being general assholes in the game. Like, I usually don't end up wanting to vote for the person who, made it harder for me to live my life.
Yeah.
In that moment.
And actually, I actually don't have the biggest issue with Jason this season. A lot of the stuff kind of comes from Scott. Jason, yes, he hides the machete and the axe and, whatever. But he's the one that's like, hey, does anyone want to come work with us on that next reward challenge if they do that? Jason still has these relationships with some of these folks that Scott doesn't. Scott like burns the bridges very fast, and that's game over. But we get Nick leaves. They turn on Debbie, and it is my favorite blindside of the season, besides maybe the Scott one, and it's because Debbie is, and I get it. I've been that player before in orgs where it's like you are so gung ho about, let's just get rid of these people. Let's stick with our group, and let's not mess this up. And to Sydney and Aubrey's credit, it's like, okay, we need to do something. As long as Debbie is here, she's not going to want to turn on this. So we have to either remove her from the situation or have to deal with this every round until we somehow get rid of Scott, Jason, and Ty. So, James, you already gave your opinion on this. Zoe, quickly, before we move on to the Scott blindside a couple episodes later, do you think that was the right move to get rid of Debbie here?
I mean, it depends on the person who voted for her.
Who we're talking about? From whose perspective?
That's yeah. Yeah. I mean,
yes, Aubrey, no.
Exactly. Depends on any decision can be a good decision if you look at it from one way or another.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Depends who you're talking about.
Yeah, we jumped 2 episodes to the Scott vote, and I do feel like this was Aubrey's best move on the season, was just having the heart-to-heart with Ty, where it's like, hey, you don't want these mean people to win, right? You want good people to win. And Ty's like, you're right, Aubrey. I do want good people to win.
That was a terrible move for Ty, though. I will agree with you on that one. It was an awful move for Ty.
And I was sitting in a bar watching this episode today, and I'm just like, I'm doing all of Ty's motions because that's how many times I've watched that scene. And so when Scott's like giving the idol and Ty looks at him, then looks back and he goes, I'm like, yes, Ty, yes, Ty, don't give him the idol. Even though I know it's a horrible move for you in the long run, don't give him the idol because I'm just tired of this Jay Brawn on my TV. Scott goes, we get down, they get rid of Julia. and Jason inevitably leaves right after. But after blowing up Ty's game, he's turned 2 times. What's to stop him from doing it a third? And it's true. Like, and he's saying this in front of the jury, and the jury who have seen Ty play this very chaotic game of going wherever, wherever the signs take him. And I still think that Ty could have potentially won in a potential situation at the end. The twist. James, we'll start with you. We get down to, hold on. Before we get to the twist, let's get to the final 4 of, the big 3 alliance of Sydney, Ty, and Aubrey plus Michelle. Do you feel? She wasn't really part of that core 3. Yeah. Do you feel like it was in Michelle's best interest to help Sydney get to that fire making, or do you think she should have just taken her out? Like, basically, what I'm asking is, if she keeps Sydney, does she still win, or do you think that she should have just? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. Like, basically, should she? Well, who was the bigger threat, Aubrey or Sydney in this situation?
I just feel like that a lot of the jury convince, say Scott and Jason specifically, like convince them to vote for Sydney, or at least to have that influence. No, you don't think so?
Oh, no.
No, I don't think so. I'll tell you right now, I think Sydney would have gotten torn into by Scott and Jason. I don't know if they would have voted for Sydney. Honestly, Jason doesn't see Scott, absolutely not.
Have you seen the Ponderosas for the season?
Actually,
I haven't.
Oh my goodness! So
I'm sure they hated Sydney.
Sydney's the only person that they didn't talk to the entire time she was there. Like they put a big old brick wall up, and like they just ghosted her. The 2 of them. Everyone else.
Yeah, 2 of them.
We're not talking to her at all. Which every time I watch the Ponderosa for this season, it's like, that's weird. It's weird that they, that they were that. And looking back on it, they were that bitter about her as soon as the Nick vote happened, where it's like, we just want Sydney out. We just want Sydney out. We just want Sydney out. It's like, okay, she didn't do anything that bad.
Okay, but we glossed over the Nick vote. I feel like we need to go back to that and discuss that real quick, because we just like jumped straight to the Debbie one. I'm like, wait, we have to discuss the Nick vote, because part of me thinks their behavior afterward is what solidified the majority's alliance togetherness. I think if they had come back to camp and gone, hey, I understand why you guys did this. It sucks for us. But if they had tried to maybe regroup and try and get some of these people back into their good graces, I don't know if that majority alliance at that point would have stayed together. But they kind of they burned that bridge when they started, pissing everyone off. So I don't know.
So is Michelle legitimately the only person who didn't piss them off all season? Like, is that
okay? That's what I'm wondering. Is it? But why did Aubrey piss them off? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah. Aubrey was just like on the other side. Like,
exactly.
They say that. They keep saying like Aubrey's playing a great game. Like Scott and Jason are both saying she's playing a great game. She's a tough competitor. This, that, and the other. I don't feel like they had any ill feelings towards her.
Yeah.
I think all of their ill feelings were towards Sydney at first, and then Ty. After Scott goes home. I feel like that was where, that's where there's ill feelings come from. But like, I never got the vibe that they didn't like Aubrey, Julia, Michelle, or Debbie. I feel like they didn't like Mr. Joe, but that's because Mr. Joe was,
Joe wasn't taking their shit. Joe was going to call them out, and they don't like, I'll tell you now, people like Scott and Jason don't like being called out on their shit. And it's why if I were on a season with a guy like Scott and Jason, I'd target them pre-merge. I don't care if it hurts the tribe. Because someone like that, you can't reason with. It's either their way or the highway. They can't be reasoned with. Take them out before they're on the jury.
Zoe, comment?
Speaking of Joe, I just want to say, like, Vladdy's okay, in hindsight. This is one of the funniest medical evacs of all time. He eats too much beef.
Yes, on his first challenge win, after not being able to do anything all season, comes back and wins a challenge and can't poop or pee, and has to be taken away.
I mean, It does change. It's funny because it does change. I think it does change the winner of the season. I think if it's, I'll sit here and say, well, because Michelle goes home, right?
Michelle goes home.
Probably.
If she, she still wins the immunity and all that.
Wait, who won that reward? Because at Final Five, it turned into the who won that reward? So Aubrey would have won Final Five immunity. Because that would have been the immunity challenge at Final Five.
So we can do fantasy booking, but I do feel like if Mr. Joe had stayed, we probably would have had a different winner. But that's because Michelle would have gone at some point. And I hate that I keep referring to him as Mr. Joe, but whatever. That's how Sydney refers to him, so I'm going to refer to him as Mr. Joe. So Mr. Joe can't use the bathroom. Mr. Joe leaves. Final four, there is a fire-making challenge. Sydney loses against Aubrey. We have our final three of Aubrey, Ty, and Michelle. And in this moment, the first time I watched it, it's like, okay, I'm fairly certain Aubrey wins, but I wouldn't hate if these other two did win. Little did I know that I would be in a minority when it came to that last part. But we'll get to that when we get to that. They introduced this twist where you can remove a juror, which they claim they've always wanted to do, but I don't know. So what do you think of the removal of the juror twist?
I think it's quite evil. I don't know. The fact that he couldn't even sit and listen to Final Tribal is just brutal to me. But also, like, I've used this twist before in one of my games, and it's always just kind of like, so this was all for nothing. And I'm not talking about for the person who uses it, because clearly it's a great advantage for them, but just on a level of like, I played Survivor and I didn't even get to vote for a winner. It's just kind of a little bit of a heartbreak.
Doubly with him because he was medevac.
I also don't think it's fair unless you have a relatively large jury.
Yeah, this was an 8-person jury before they removed him. James, do you think that they could bring this back eventually?
I think they could. I'll be honest, I think the biggest thing I didn't like about it was the fact that they didn't tell the final three, hey, you guys are the final three prior to it. Like, I understood the shock factor they wanted to have, but I honestly think at that point, Michelle and Ty both thought that Aubrey had this in the bag. Like, I think they thought that, okay, we have a shot, but they thought Aubrey was the front runner. I should say that.
Front runner, yes. I would say that they potentially think that Aubrey's the front runner.
So I don't know. I wasn't a fan of the fact that was a secret to them.
Well, and the crazy thing is, I feel like Michelle has read the room so well at this point.
Oh yeah.
That instead of getting rid of Mr. Joe, who she knows is going to vote for Aubrey, she gets rid of Neil, who hasn't been in the game for many days at this point, but still understands that one, he's also probably still going to vote for Aubrey, but two, he might be able to convince these people to go this way. And I feel like even though Michelle and Neil had barely any interactions for the most of the pre-merge, the fact that she was still able to see this as, this is my potential biggest threat going into Final Tribal, I think it was a testament to her game. And when he says what he says, and I know I said I wasn't going to bring it up again, but it happens, and it just happened. The suckle of the teat and all that stuff. I'm going to, and Jeff says, it sounds like that was the best idea. And she's like, yeah, I think so. Based and we're going to talk about the fans in a second, because the fans are horrible. Fans are horrible people. Neil goes, we get our final three, and it seems off the bat that all three of these people do actually have a chance at winning the game. It doesn't seem like this jury is just like totally in the corner of one person. So Zoe, the first time you watched this, after the final tribal was over, but before the votes were read, who did you think honestly was going to win based off of how tribal went?
Aubrey. But also this was the first season that I watched, as I mentioned, and I thought that I had the best fucking read on this season, and I didn't process the fact that they edited around some people to like make people seem like, you know, like I didn't understand the concept of a winners at this point.
Yeah,
I was like,
agreed.
100% Aubrey's winning. Like, can't believe. I literally said to my friend at the time, I can read this show like a book. And then they're like sitting at Final Tribal and it's Michelle, and I was like,
so much for that.
okay, what season should I start next? Let's go. But like, yeah, so genuinely Aubrey up until the moment it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
James?
So, I mean, obviously, you know me, I've watched almost every season spoiled, but this was one of the ones, like, watching that I know what I would have thought at the time, and that is, if it weren't for Jason's pitch and the music they played when he's talking about Michelle being stronger, I would have thought it was Aubrey, 100%. But his pitch when he was saying it was very clear. Or no, it wasn't Jason. Sorry, I think it was Scott. It was very clear to me that he was rooting for Michelle. And I think the one thing the show didn't do a good job of explaining, they did a good job of highlighting. I think Michelle's game to an extent. They could have done way better with it. They did a good job of highlighting Aubrey's game, but they didn't do a good job of explaining why Aubrey lost. Yes. And I wish they would have highlighted that more.
And that is exactly what I'm getting to with this. Everyone knows I hate Survivor Reddit. I think it's full of horrible people, and I call it a cesspool. This was right around the time that people started really coming after Survivor players, not only for their personal lives, but because of how they're portrayed on the show. And mainly, Michelle got a lot of the brunt this season because, Aubrey was robbed and all this other bullshit, which anyone that watches this knows I don't believe in robbed players. You either win or you don't. That's just how it is. So everyone setting that first, bothered me. But then when I found out that people are like attacking this woman, saying that you stole this win and all that, it was wild to me that that these people were coming out of their little holes to do this. But I also blame production because for anyone that listened to the Kagayan recap of this, we talked about how well that season was paced, how well it was edited, where yes, on paper, Tony gets a lot of confessionals, but it seems like we're getting a lot of screen time from Tony, Cass, Tasha, Spencer, Wu, everyone, mostly everyone at that merge, as compared to the same theme a few seasons later where it becomes the Aubrey Ty show for the large bulk of the merge, and Michelle's just kind of there. And what I talked about what me and Zoe and everyone else talked about yesterday with Cambodia is this point in Survivor history where I feel like the show really started to lean into the whole, we don't want people to guess right on who was going to win. So we're just going to do everything in our power to make sure that people can't sit at home and guess who the winner is, because we like to be smarter than our viewers. And we get that in Cambodia, where it's like it's the Kelly Wentworth show for a lot of it. We get it here with Aubrey over Michelle. We get it the next season where it's the David Wright show until Adam wins, and so on. Where so before we went live, the three of us talked about this, where it felt like the production really screwed over Michelle as far as her portrayal, and I feel like they've done they didn't do her any favors by you've never heard production step up and say, oh yeah, Michelle's good. In fact, this season gets kind of shit on because it seems like production had their favorite, and because their favorite didn't win, let's just shit all over this winner, even though she has a lot of merit to her win. And I know that was a lot, y'all, so I do want to get your thoughts on it. James, we'll start with you first. Just everything I touched on or anything else that you wanted to as far as how it was portrayed.
So, first of all, I think you're completely right with Michelle. Like, they didn't highlight anything in her win. Like, she, to me, was almost, I would argue, invisible, if not under the radar, until actually she was left out of the Scott vote. I kind of was like, okay, when are they going to start showing Michelle's game? Because I know she's the winner. Are we going to start seeing it? Because I'm seeing Homegirl she's seen as Julia's kind of almost sidekick. And then that episode's kind of where I started actually going, oh, hey, that's who Michelle is. So I kind of feel like they hit her until that point, and I feel like that was one of the big drawbacks. But also, it's a little hard. How are you going to show someone like that? Because we have to point out she didn't go to tribal council at all during the pre-merge.
Yes.
So what are they going to show, really? And then also, I don't know when you started watching Survivor, but one of the biggest complaints of the 20s is how predictable the winners were based on the edit. I correctly guessed almost everything from Samoa onward. Like, the winners were pretty obvious to me. Like, I picked the final three of South Pacific.
You got Samoa right?
Samoa, well, okay, so Samoa, I actually pegged Natalie White as the winner from, like, day one.
Oh, wow.
I looked at the cast. It was weird. Maybe there's a little bit of confirmation bias, but I looked at the cast and was like, Natalie White's the winner.
But as a person that's not a Russell Hantz fan, I am fine with you having picked Natalie White as the winner. But
to continue on that, though, like, the issue is it was so obvious. The final three of One World, blatant. Like, you might as well. South Pacific, honestly, the only people I think the edit had is like people who could win were Coach and Sophie. Going into the finale, I'm pretty sure it was
going to the finale, yes, because Albert wasn't.
Yeah. No, Albert was out because Albert was invisible episode 1. That's one of the things with edit.
Oh, you like read the okay, I see what you're saying. You read the edit.
I read the edit, and it was obvious from early on who was going to win.
Okay.
So they did try and start hiding it, and the downside of that is, yeah, you end up with situations with this Aubrey Michelle thing where some people are just getting left out of the story, so you will. Like, people like Michelle was left out, but it's the only way to hide the winner.
Yeah. Zoe, do you feel like do you feel like she was buried in the edit, but do you feel like production purposely did this, or is this just a miscalculation on their end of things?
It feels intentional in one way or another. Like, whether or not, I don't know necessarily that it was out of spite because Aubrey didn't win, but it was definitely intentional to cover up, the like you were saying, like, in an attempt to surprise us. And we talked about this last night with Jeremy, was that, like, they did not feature him at all, like, with his story that he surprised everybody with at Tribal Council, even though I'm so positive that he talked about it more than what was shown, like, not necessarily with the other people, but with his confessionals.
Right.
Yeah, but so, like, in this, they were wanting to surprise us so bad that I was surprised because I didn't know who the winner was. Like you said, like, she was so invisible that it took up until, like, a couple votes into merge to really even see her. Yeah, that's not to say that she was undeserving, but
yes, and I would never come on here and say that, especially for Michelle Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. One, because I don't think that you can be undeserving in this game, but two, because she basically does the exact same thing, and I think even better her second time playing, and she got third place in that. I think that Michelle actually plays somehow a better game in Winners of War because she's not being dragged along by anyone. She just keeps ending up on the wrong side of the numbers, and all of her allies keep getting voted out, and she keeps working her way out of situations where she could be the next boot, but it's all for naught because, she's playing with Tony in Tony's best season. But I love Michelle Fitzgerald as a winner and as a player. She's better Amanda Kimmel. And as far being dead serious,
I see it. Yeah,
she wins challenges. She's lovable by everyone.
She's even more likable than Amanda.
Huh?
She's even more likable than Amanda.
Yeah, but but I think where she really thrives is the fact that she knows how to talk to people. She knows how to sit at Final Tribal and talk. She knows how to talk at Tribal, and she's not apologetic like Amanda comes off in both of her Final Tribals, where it's like, I know I refer to her as Pout Face in the 3 seasons that we've had her. But it's true. Like, it's this constant pouting as compared to Michelle, where even when she's crying, like, what she's saying, you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, you're right. I'm sitting here nodding at everything she's saying on this one. Did you know that for sure that Aubrey and Ty were going to vote for Sydney? No, I didn't. But I decided, I would rather, give Sydney the opportunity in this moment, even if they didn't, and even if that was bullshit. I believe it sitting here, and I feel like a lot of the jurors believed it. And I'm everyone that says that if Neil was on the jury, that Aubrey would have won, false, because Michelle won 5-2. So it's not like Neil being there would have, it would have given Aubrey an extra vote, but it would still be 5-3. And I don't see Debbie changing her vote. I don't see Sydney changing her vote. And it was Nick and Mr. Joe that voted for Aubrey, right?
It was per Wikipedia.
Nick and Mr. Joe.
Yeah, Nick and Joe. Really?
Yeah. Which means that everyone's sitting there like, well, if Neil was there, I never got the vibe that Neil was like some all-time great juror or anything like that. But also, let's say that he's just an average juror and he still votes for Aubrey in the situation. It's 5-3. I don't see Debbie changing her vote. Anyone else? And the fact that Sydney and Debbie were closer, or at least shown to be closer to Aubrey than to Michelle this season, and they still vote for Michelle at the end, I think, once again, is a testament to Michelle's social game that, these people that I wasn't really aligned with still decided to give me the vote. Zoe, thoughts on that jury, or how that jury breakdown happened, knowing, how everyone voted?
If that's truly what you believe about Neil, then I don't think that you can simultaneously praise Michelle for making a good decision about who to remove from the jury between Neil and Joe, because if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. If Neil can't convince the jury, then whatever, either one, who cares? So that being said, like, I do think that, like, I feel like I know that you were like annoyed with Julia at the end and Final Tribal, like while watching you watch it, like,
oh yeah,
you're such a child, like whatever. But like, I think that
okay, never mind.
She gave Michelle the opportunity to like speak for herself and spoke of Michelle very highly. And Neil wasn't given the same opportunity to do that of Aubrey. And like, maybe, and you said like maybe Scott and Jason were open going into it, and maybe they could have had their minds changed by somebody who wasn't as nervous or had the perception or the outside perspective to be able to say good things about Aubrey's game that she couldn't necessarily say herself.
That's a good point. James?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, one of the things I tried to like look at was, okay, how are these people presenting their arguments? How are they presenting their cases? And I did notice that Aubrey came across as a bit more apologetic for the way she played the game. She didn't seem to be, honestly, I think she should have been a little bit more bombastic and tried to bury Michelle on, hey, she was left out of some votes. She didn't always know what was going on. And obviously burying Ty is easy, but I kind of feel like she was seen as having a weaker argument when it came to actually arguing her case. And maybe her Final Tribal Council is part of what did her in, because Michelle, I think, did do an overall pretty good job of explaining, hey, this was the move. These were the moves that I made. And when I was on the bottom, I had the option of trying to stir it up from the bottom, or I could try and ingratiate myself with the majority. Mm-hmm. And ingratiating myself with the majority is pretty much which was better for me.
Yeah.
So,
and I've done episodes on this on the pod talking about the myth of the bitter jury. Do I think that people can be bitter on a jury? Yes, obviously. I always like to look at all stars as a thing where it's like, okay, these people were pissed off, but these people were pissed off because of things outside of the game that they brought into the game. Then I look at things like Cagayan, where people are clearly pissed off at Tony and still vote for Tony to win. There have been many seasons where the jury comes in pissed off at people and come off as pissed off at people as they talk to them and still vote for them in the end. The difference is the seasons where the internet has deemed that the winner was non-deserving, they just immediately latch onto, well, the jury has to be bitter or else they would have voted for that person. When in reality, the jury didn't seem that overly pissed off at anyone here. And if anything, they seemed more angry at Ty for flipping so many times rather than Aubrey or Michelle. They just went in there and just insulted them, which is what happens pretty much in every final tribal. So this is going to be not the last time I talk about this, because I think there might be another season coming up soon where people once again like to say, oh yes, if the jury wasn't bitter, this person would have won. There are many cases throughout the history of the show where jurors are portrayed as angry or upset and still vote for the person that they are shown to be angry or upset at. In fact, I would say that usually happens. I feel like if they don't want to talk to you, they just don't talk to you. So that and I just want to get that out of the way, because I don't think that this jury was somehow so bitter at Aubrey that they decided, hey, let's all just vote for this person. I feel like they were all bitter at Ty, or at least peeved at Ty, and decided we get Michelle as the winner. We are teased for Millennials versus Gen X, which I'm very excited about because my all-time Survivor crush is on this season. I'm really excited to wake up and start watching. It's Hannah Shapiro. Everyone knows this. It's Hannah Shapiro. So I'm excited to wake up and do that tomorrow. I hate the theme, but it happens.
Really?
It's fine. Zoe, final thoughts on everything that we've talked about. Shoot.
I think it's a great season with great character and a really good storyline. Some of the moves aren't there are some really solid moves in here, and it's enjoyable to watch and not really ever boring, even if it's not the most strategic season or whatever. It's definitely one of the most dramatic with all the medical evacs. And if you love, I think that a lot of people watch reality TV for the drama. So this one ranks pretty high for me.
James?
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. I watch reality TV for the drama. Specifically, I watch Survivor for the interpersonal politics of it. Like the fun part of Survivor for me is you vote these people out and then have to go, please give me $1 million. Like that is the whole fun part of watching Survivor. And there's a commenter, Lexa. She's completely right. It's all about jury management. So, you have to manage these people as you're voting them out. And I think Michelle did a really good job of it. And it is, Aubrey was right. That was one of the things she was worried about. It's why she didn't want Michelle sitting at the end. Yeah. So she was right to watch out for it.
Overall, I give the season a solid 4 out of 5.
Very solid.
Obviously, it's not going to be Kagayan. Yes, it falls into the 30s trap that we talked about, but I do feel like this is another one of my comfort seasons. I think besides Blood versus Water and Marquesas, this is my third as far as seasons that I could just put on and just, okay, this is fun. It's very easy to get through, even though, there are scenes where you cry. But yes, thank you both so much for coming on. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And we will see you after Survivor Millennials versus Gen X. And I didn't make a Thailand reference this episode, so there you go.